All right, good morning, fifth period. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for coming to class today. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do the bell ringer first. So we have solve the equation 10 parentheses x plus 5 equals 2x plus 9. We're going to solve this one to get the x's on one side of the equation and the numbers on the other so that we can solve for x. So you should see it on the document camera. Let me zoom in. All right. So my step one for when I'm solving equations like this is to simplify if possible. So I can simplify both sides of the equation by distributing the 10 to everything inside the parentheses and distributing the 2 to everything inside the parentheses. So 10 times x gives me 10x, and then 10 times 5 gives me 50. And then on the other side of the equation, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 9 gives me 18. So step one was to simplify, and I have done that. Now I'm going to move on to my next step, which is getting my variables on one side and my numbers on the other. So I can choose to move the 2x to the left side or the 10x to the right side. I'm going to choose to move the 2x to the left side because 10 is the bigger number, so I want my variables over there. So it's technically a positive 2x, but we don't write the positive, so it's going to be negative 2x. Or I'm going to do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction, to move the x. So I'm going to subtract it, and what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So my 2x's cancel, and I'm left with 18. 10 minus 2 is 8x, and my 50 comes down. Now I want to get the 50 moved to the other side so that my x is by itself. So I'm going to subtract 50 from both sides to move it. And 18 minus 50 gives me a negative 32. The 50s cancel, and then I have 8x equals negative 32. So now I'm going to solve this by dividing both sides by 8. And I'm left with x equals negative 4. All right, so that should be a review. It's what we worked on last week. Now we're going to move on to our lesson for today, lesson 1.5. It's about solving literal equations. So taking an equation and then kind of moving the variables to get it to look like what it's asking for. So right here, on the one I'm sharing my screen on is some vocab terms. So we have literal equation. So that is an equation with 2 or more variables. So the literal equation in these ones we're going to solve usually have y and x or some other kind of variables. Then we have the formula, which shows how one or more variable is related. So a formula for perimeter is like area equals length times width, I'm pretty sure. So there's one or more variables and to show how it's related. So the area is length times width. Review terms, we have inverse operations, 2 operations that undo each other, equation, statement that 2 expressions are equal, and a solution. An equation is a value that makes a statement. A solution is a value that makes the equation true. So x equals negative 4, and our last problem was the solution. So now I'm going to switch over to the document camera. So make sure you can see my screen. I'm going to be doing some notes on lesson 1.5. So need a black pen. Okay. So first up, we're going to do this one in purple that's solve for y. Okay, so solve for y when you have the equation 3y plus 4x equals 9. So we're going to take the skills we learned in our last lesson of moving things to the other sides of the equations and apply it to this problem. So 3y plus 4x equals 9, solve for y. So I want to get y by itself. So I'm going to do like I did before and move my letter that I'm looking for on one side and then my everything else on the other. So I'm going to move the 4x. It's being added, so I'm going to subtract it to move it. Do that to both sides of the equation. The 4x's will cancel, and then I'll just be left with 3y equals 9 minus 4x. Now, I have my y on one side and everything else on the other, except there's a 3 in front of the y. So I want to get rid of the 3 by dividing, because 3 times y is being multiplied. So the 3 and the y are being multiplied together. The opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 3, and then I'll be left with just the y. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So those 3's will cancel, and I'll be left with y equals 9 minus 4x divided by 3. All right, so I know that looks kind of messy with the fraction bar and some numbers on top and some on the bottom, but that's your answer, and that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be kind of messy, but that's your answer. So what we're going to be doing today is solving for the one it asks for by moving around the equation to get that correctly. So does anyone have any questions on my steps that I did here? You can type them in the chat or unmute yourself if you have a question. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my second problem, example problem, which is solve for x when the equation is y equals 3x plus 5xz. That didn't really look like a y. Okay, so I'm going to solve for x. So for this equation, I have y equals 3x plus 5xz. So I have two x's here, and I'm trying to solve for x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the distributive property and go in reverse. So I'm going to pull out what both numbers have in common to try and simplify it. So how in our warm-up today, where did I put that piece of paper? I lost it. Well, but in our warm-up today, how it was 10x or 10 parentheses x plus 5, I'm going to do that to this equation. It's simplified right now, but I'm going to pull it back and make it not simple, if that makes sense. So what do my 3x and my 5x plus z have in common? What is a factor in both of them? X. So we have a 3 and an x and a 5x and a z. So I'm going to pull out the x by using the distributive property to simplify or to make it easier to manipulate. So the x is going to be gone from this, so it'll just be 3 plus, take out the x out of this one, so 5z. So now I unsimplified it and made it x times 3 plus 5z. My y equals stays. So now the x is being multiplied by the 3 plus 5z. And so to move that part to the other side of the equation, I'm going to do division because that is the opposite of multiplication. So the x is being multiplied by the 3 plus 5z. So I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division, to get rid of this parentheses. So then I'm going to do 3 plus 5z divided by, do that on both sides. And now those will cancel, and I'll be left with y divided by 3 plus 5z. Ooh, my pen's dying. Equals x. I know that one's kind of confusing, and so your homework won't have any problems like that, but I'm just showing you the example to hopefully get your minds thinking. Okay, So what the homework is going to look like is it's going to be more formulas that you have to move around. So this is more numbers, but what your homework is going to look like is like this, the area of a triangle. So I'm going to do this problem now to kind of get us in the mindset of homework for today. So let's let it focus. Okay, can you guys see that pretty good? It looks kind of blurry on mine. So can someone in the chat let me know if it's blurry or okay? Okay, so solve the formula for the indicated variable. So the area of a triangle, the formula for that is area equals half of base times height. Solve for B. So what it's asking me to do is solve the formula for B. So I'm going to take this formula and move it around to get it as a B equals equation. So I have area equals 1/2 base times height. So now I'm going to try and get the B by itself. So I'm going to have to undo or use the inverse operation of what's being done here to get it by itself. So the 1 divided by 2 is division. So to move the 1 divided by 2, I'm going to do multiplication. So I'm going to multiply it by the reciprocal fraction, which is 2 divided by 1. And I'm going to do that to both sides of my equation. And then on the right side, my fractions will cancel. And I'll be left with BH. And then 2 divided by 1, or 2 times A, gives me 2A. Now I need to get B by itself, because remember, I'm trying to solve for a B equals equation. So I'm going to divide both sides by this H, because the B is being multiplied by the H. So I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So divide both sides by H. And I'm left with 2A divided by H equals B. And then if you want to rewrite it to look prettier, you can do B equals 2A divided by H, just kind of moving it around if you want to see it in B equals form. So does that make a little bit of sense? Anybody completely lost and need me to do it again? Or are you guys kind of following?
I'm following.
Okay, thank you, Ev. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and assign today's assignment and go over the first problem with you guys. And then I will stop the recording, and then you can ask questions if you feel more comfortable asking them that way. So let me turn off my camera really quick and share my screen. Okay, so if you go into the classroom, we are doing assignment 1.5. So you'll notice that it is on a Google form. So you're going to click on the Google form, and it'll pop up like this. What period do you have algebra? 5th period. Okay, so then it's going to, every question is going to be its own screen. So there's only 6 questions total. And first you have to solve the formula for the variable it's asking for. And then in the second part of the question, it asks you to plug in these numbers into your new equation to solve for what you were trying to find out. So earlier it asked us to solve for M, and then in the bottom question it says solve for M using these variables. So we're going to do question 1 together, and then you'll have the rest of class to work on it on your own. If you have any questions, I will be here to answer them. So let me put my camera back on. Get a piece of scratch paper. Okay, so the formula for the linear equation is y equals mx plus b. Now, we are wanting to solve for m. Okay, So does anyone know what my first step would be? I want to get m on one side of the equation and everything else on the other. So looking at this, what do you think my first step might be? Is it going to be to divide x or subtract b? Let me know in the chat. You can either divide x or subtract b. Good job. Okay, so subtract b is my first step because I want to try and get m by itself. So I'm going to get rid of everything that's not attached to the m first. So I'm going to subtract b from both sides. This will get m on one side and everything else on the other. So what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. I'm subtracting it because it's addition, and the opposite of addition is subtraction. So now I have y minus b equals mx. And to get m by itself, since it's being multiplied by x, I'm going to divide because the opposite of multiplication is division. And I'm going to divide by x on both sides so that m is by itself. So those x's will cancel and I'll be left with m on the right, and on the left I'll have y minus b divided by x. So looking at the Google form, I have 4 options, and the option that most looks like mine is option 1. If it helps you to rewrite it so that you have the m on the left side, you can. So then I'm just going to move the m over here, and then this will stay the same. And then it looks exactly like option 1. Oops. So there's option 1 is the correct answer on number 1. And then it says the slope of the line is represented by m. What is the slope when y equals 15, b equals 3, and x equals 2? So when y is 13, b is 3, and x is 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take those numbers and plug them into my equation. So for y, I have 15. And then I'm going to keep the subtraction sign. And then for b, I have 3. Keep my division. And then put 2 in for x. And then I'm going to solve. 15 divided by, or minus 3 gives me 12. And then I'm still divided by 2. 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. So my answer is m equals 6. So then on right here, I'm just going to type in the number 6 and then go to the next question. So there is how you do number 1 on the homework. And you have the rest of class to finish homework.